Today's nugget is found in Acts chapter 27, verses 30 through 32. And as the shipmen were round about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea under color, as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, "Except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. God, we come before you right now, and we're so thankful to be able to come before your throne. God, to be able to go into your word. I pray that what we go over will be rooted in our hearts. In Jesus' name. Acts 27 starts off with Paul being joined by other prisoners and put into the charge of Julius the centurion. They are heading actually to Italy because Paul is going to Rome because he appealed to Caesar in the ship of Alexandria. Now they're going through many different places during this time, and they start the voyage when they're finally getting to their last part. They start the voyage even though the wind wasn't allowing them to. Paul advises them to wait. The wind doesn't look very good, and the time of the year, different strong winds are going to go by. We need to wait for later. And they decide to move on anyway because they see that the wind starts to blow softly. This wind that's called Euroclydon was upon them, or it's also known as Gregalia. The sailors start stressing out at this point. They're thinking, man, what's going to happen? We're not going to be able to go through and make it through this. So then what happens is Paul encourages them by saying that no one will die. He actually says that an angel appears to him and says, "Fear not." But they does let them know that the ship is going to unfortunately wreck. But no one on the ship will die. They start drifting toward this island. They let out anchors and they're prepared to leave the ship. But Paul quickly tells them that if they leave the boat, they will not be saved. This word actually translates to preserved. Shortly after, Paul tells them to eat for their health. He's saying, hey man, you guys have been fasting for 14 days. You haven't ate anything. You need to eat right now. And they go and they sit together. And after that, it's actually they begin to be of good cheer. They begin to have happiness after this. Then the ship wrecks, but all of them reach the land safely. I want to get back to our nugget where basically Paul is saying these people are prepared to leave the ship. They're going to leave, and Paul is saying, no, you cannot leave the ship, because if you leave this ship, you will not be saved. That means you will not be preserved. That means that God's covering will not be on you if you leave the ship. So what happens after that is we see that they cut the ropes to the boats that they were going to take to leave the ship. I also want to look at 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22. It says, "And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." Obey means to hear intelligently. That means I put my attention on this. Another translation actually says, "Behold, it's better to do his good pleasure." You want to be right. If you want to be right with God, you have to be obedient. That means, what is God asking you to do? What has God asked you to give up? Maybe God's asked you to lay some things aside. Maybe during this pandemic, you've picked up some things that God has told you to lay down and that you shouldn't have ever picked up in the first place. Let's just go before the Lord in prayer. God, I'm so thankful that we get the opportunity to come before your throne again. I pray right now, God, I know this message was for me as well. God, I don't want to pick up things that you have told me to lay down. God, I don't want to have things to distract me. I want my focus to be upon you. And God, when I come before your throne, when we're all called to come and see you, God, I want to know that I was fully obedient to you. God, I want to know that I did well. In Jesus' name.